Hello there, Marvel fans of all ages. My name is Billy. Ever since we saw the post-credit scene of Spider-Man Far From Home, where J. Jonah Jameson revealed to the world that Spider-Man is Peter Parker, we all wondered, what's next for our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man? Today I'm gonna talk about what I think would be the best comic book storyline to follow for the web-slinger's third solo movie within the walls of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Spoiler warning in case my prediction comes true. Just sit back, relax, and let's marvel. First, there are three things we need to consider to come up with an educated guess. Number one, what's in it for Sony? In the new deal negotiated by Marvel and Sony, Marvel will be getting 25% of the profits from this movie. That converts to over $250 million if it makes at least $1 billion in the box office, which it probably will. So why would Sony give up that much money if they can produce the third Spider-Man movie on their own? Well, Sony's looking at the big picture. They tried to create their own mini Marvel universe revolving around Spider-Man characters. A Sinister Six movie was supposed to follow the Andrew Garfield Amazing Spider-Man 2 movie, but Amazing Spider-Man 2 was trashed by critics and fans alike. They also tried to make Silver and Black, a movie pairing Silver Sable and Black Cat, both of which Spider-Man had a complicated love-hate relationship in the comic books. Silver and Black was stuck in development hell. Its director eventually left for another project, then it ultimately have been cancelled. So Sony clearly needs help in developing their own cinematic universe or Spider-Verse, especially when Spider-Man permanently leaves the MCU. Enter Marvel Studios' genius extraordinaire, Kevin Feige. Sony believes that he can guide them on how to expand their own universe given his track record with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Spider-Man's third solo movie is probably the last chance for Sony to expand their Spider-Verse. So they want Kevin Feige to help them cook up a storyline that will open up opportunities to bring in new characters and the best way to move them forward independent from the MCU. Number 2. What's in it for Marvel? After Disney's Fox acquisition, there were rumors that Kevin Feige was so busy in developing the reintroduction of the Fox characters to the MCU that he barely had any time for Spider-Man. Well, this is very understandable. It's not easy to make a series of interconnected films, especially in a scale this grand. That's why they always set up a timeline for their next 5 to 10 movies. There was even a report way back in 2014 that Marvel Studios has mapped out their films all the way to 2028. So, if Kevin Feige is that busy, why would he want to be involved in the third Spider-Man movie? Shouldn't he just worry about other projects like X-Men and the Fantastic Four? The first obvious answer is that they want a proper closure on Spider-Man's story in the MCU. It will be weird to leave Spider-Man's storyline hanging in the MCU, especially now that he's supposed to be Tony Stark's protege. The other logical answer is that, what if the best way to introduce some of those reacquired characters is through a Spider-Man movie, and or a movie with Spider-Man in it? What if this is already what Marvel Studios have planned all along? Which brings us to number 3. Where was the story left off? Setting aside the future of the MCU and Sony's Spider-Verse, the third movie needs to follow Peter Parker's current storyline. After watching Spider-Man Far From Home, we can conclude that the next biggest obstacle Peter faces are dealing with the fact that his identity is no longer secret and proving that he's not a murderer. In the comic books, there were a number of times that his identity was revealed, but most of the time, somehow, someway, still ended with him keeping his identity secret. Whether it people thinking he's just another guy impersonating Spider-Man, having Prowler wear a Spider-Man costume while he's with his friends who are starting to suspect that he's Spider-Man, and the most controversial of all, having Doctor Strange cast a spell to make the whole world forget Spider-Man's secret identity. Yeah. So I guess the more viable story arc to look for is where Spider-Man is framed and has to find a way to prove his innocence. So, with that in mind, and with knowledge of Spider-Man's comic history, the most likely story arc they'll base the third Spider-Man movie is Identity Crisis. This story arc is one of the most popular Spider-Man comic book series in the 90s. But before I dig into the details of this story arc, you might ask me, why am I so confident that the story of the next Spider-Man movie will be based on the comics? Well, after the release of Far From Home, Fandango interviewed Kevin Feige and asked about the post-credit scene of Peter's identity being revealed. And Kevin Feige answered, "It sets up for a Peter Parker story that has never been done before on film. So we can conclude that it is an existing story, obviously from the comics." You may also be asking me, "So Billy, You think the third movie will be called Spider-Man Identity Crisis? No, I don't think so. I think the storyline will be based on Identity Crisis, but obviously, the title should have the word home in it. So, I think the title of the third movie will be Spider-Man Plays Like Home. Why Plays Like Home? Let me explain. In the Identity Crisis storyline, Peter Parker was framed for murder, much like how he was framed at the end of Far From Home. So the way the movie will play out will be every single one of Peter's family and friends will be questioned and will be under surveillance. Not wanting to involve any of them, he'll choose not to go home and just live by himself. Not knowing where to go, he'll end up staying in the old Avengers Tower, making it a place like home. And because of this Far From Home Easter egg, it's pretty much all but confirmed that the old Avengers Tower will eventually become the Baxter Building, home of the Fantastic Four. Sneaking into the building, he'll discover different gizmos and gadgets, giving him the idea that if he only used certain parts of his powers and used these gadgets instead of his webs, he can be a completely different masked character. In the comics, he used a jetpack and stingers to become the superhero named Hornet. He used a dark interdimensional suit to pose as a villain named Dusk. He wore a bulletproof vest and used his sleeping ability to be a superhero named Prodigy. And finally, he uses mainly strength and speed to pose as a crook for hire named Ricochet. He will use the hero identities, Hornet and Prodigy, when he needs to do something heroic and prove his innocence. And then he used the villain identities, Dusk and Ricochet, when he needs to do something dirty, like spying on J. Jonah Jameson to figure out how he got from Mysterio the video that framed him, or pretend to work with, say, Kraven the Hunter, who is rumored to be the main villain on the movie, based on this Kraven truck from Morbius set photos, and this possible Easter egg from Far From Home, where Peter wears an orange shirt with a lion emblem on it, as in the orange lion vest that Kraven the Hunter wears. So this speculation works for reason number 3, as this will perfectly follow the story that Far From Home left off. What does Marvel get from it? This is an awesome way to introduce the Fantastic Four. While Peter is staying in the Baxter Building, or his place like home, he'll probably encounter a character who often works late at night in the building. Either this character will help Peter, like give him food or even lend him gadgets for him to try out, or he could be shown being always mad for finding out someone is stealing his experimental gadgets. Towards the end, this character will be revealed to be Reed Richards. That's right, Mr. Fantastic himself. How about Sony? What do they get from it? It helps them expand their live-action Spider-Verse with a new superhero team. In the comics, a wealthy socialite named Daniel Lyons, who is secretly a masked crime fighter named Black Marvel, obtained the 4 costumes that Spider-Man used in Identity Crisis. He then gives it to 4 teenagers and trained them to become crime fighters. They continued to use the names of their costumes' identity, but together known as the Slingers. I know what you're thinking. The Slingers? I've never heard of them. Would Sony make a movie out of this unknown superhero team? Well, have you ever heard of the Guardians of the Galaxy before they joined the MCU? If Sony was willing to make a Sinister Six movie, or even the cancelled Silver and Black movie, then they would definitely welcome the idea of making a Slingers movie, especially if the theoretical Spider-Man Plays Like Home movie is well received by both the fans and the critics. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notified whenever a new Marvel-related video gets uploaded. Thanks for watching. Peace out.